He did not look at the women smiling at him. He did not slow his step when they leaned closer. He did not hear their laughter. The rip came sharp and loud, cutting through the room like a gunshot. The giant froze. His boot hung open at the sole, leather torn wide enough to let winter crawl inside. A mountain man without sound boots did not last long. Everyone knew that. Someone laughed. Someone always did. Then, from the back of the store, a quiet voice said, "I can fix it." And for the first time, the mountain man turned, wondering who had spoken to his pain instead of his pride. Big Elk Crossing had learned to hold its breath when Boone Calder walked through town. The bell over Fletcher's general store screamed when he ducked through the door, shaking dust from the rafters. The smell of pine sap, wet hide, and cold iron followed him inside, pushing out the lavender soap and tobacco smoke. Conversation died. Every head turned. Boone Calder stood tall, even hunched, his shoulders wide as a wagon bed, his beard dark and thick with frost. Rumor said he slept with one eye open and wrestled bears for meat. Rumor also said he had a gold claim buried high in the Bitter Peak Mountains, enough to buy 3 towns like this one. The widows noticed gold. Lillian Crow noticed first. She stepped forward in her blue silk dress, chin lifted, smile practiced. "Mr. Calder," she said sweetly. "Didn't expect to see you down from the ridge so soon." Boone didn't answer her. His eyes scanned the shelves, measuring supplies. Flour, salt, shot. Lillian laughed softly, the sound sharp. "Of course, but winter is long up there. A man might need company." Other women drifted closer, fans fluttering despite the cold. Boone turned away from them, boots heavy on the floor. That was when the nail caught. Leather tore. Clean. Final. The room went still. Boone looked down at his ruined boot. The wool sock beneath was already damp from melting snow. His jaw tightened. He had ridden 3 days. He had no spare pair. "Well," Lillian said lightly, "looks like the beast bleeds after all." That was when the quiet voice came again. "I can fix it." Behind the counter, half hidden by stacked sacks of sugar, sat Eleanor Price. Most folks forgot she worked there, unless they needed ledgers balanced or shelves dusted. She was 30, heavy through the hips and shoulders, her brown dress plain and worn thin. Her hair was pulled back tight, no ribbon, no fuss. She was looking at the boot, only the boot. "I've got an awl and waxed thread," she said, voice steady though her hands trembled slightly. "If you take it off, I can stitch it strong enough to last the winter." Lillian scoffed. "Don't be absurd. You're a clerk, not a cobbler." Eleanor didn't answer her. She waited. Boone looked at the silk dresses, the smirks, then at Eleanor, who wasn't smiling at all. She wasn't looking at his face. She was studying the tear like it mattered. He sat on a crate, without a word, and pulled the boot off. Silence pressed down hard as Eleanor came around the counter. She moved slowly, her weight shifting the floorboards, drawing quiet judgment from the room. She didn't seem to notice. She took the ruined boot into her lap, dirt and snow staining her apron. Her fingers changed once she began, thick, calloused, sure. Punch, pull, punch, pull. Someone whispered something cruel. Eleanor's cheeks flushed, but she kept her eyes on the leather. Boone watched the way her brow furrowed, the way she didn't chatter or apologize. She worked like the task was all that existed. 10 minutes passed. The women drifted away, bored. "Done," Eleanor said softly. The stitch was ugly. Thick black thread crossed the tear in hard lines. Boone slid the boot on and stood. He stomped once, then again, solid. He reached into his coat and set a gold nugget on the counter. "Heavy, bright." Eleanor's eyes widened. "Sir, that's too much." "I didn't pay for the thread," Boone said. His voice was low, rough. He met her eyes for the first time. "I paid for the quiet." He gathered his supplies and left without another word. 3 weeks later, snow buried Big Elk Crossing. Eleanor kept the nugget hidden in a tin beneath her bed. She hadn't spent it. It felt like proof. The town talked anyway. They said Boone Calder had pitied her, said he threw money at the fat girl for ruining her apron. Eleanor said nothing. Silence was familiar. Then Boone came back. He walked straight to the counter, ignoring the stares. "Where is she?" Eleanor was on a ladder, stocking coffee tins. Her hand slipped when she heard his voice. A tin clattered loud. She climbed down slowly, feeling every eye on her back. Boone stood between her and the crowd without touching her. "The stitch holding?" she asked quietly. He nodded, then held out a small bundle wrapped in soft deerskin. "Thought this matched your eyes." Inside lay a length of deep green silk ribbon. Rich, rare. Her breath caught. "It's beautiful, but why?" "You mend things," Boone said. "I've got more that need fixing." Lillian stepped forward, sharp and smiling. "Surely silk like that is wasted." Boone turned. The room froze. "I didn't buy it for you." He looked back at Eleanor. "I've got a coat, needs a new lining." "Heavy work. Bring it by Thursday." Quote. When he left, the town stared at Eleanor Price like they had never seen her before. She touched the ribbon once, smiling to herself, and somewhere deep in her chest, something long broken began to hold. The winter solstice dance came whether you wanted it or not. Big Elk Crossing treated it like mercy. One night of warmth and music before the snow tightened its grip. Eleanor Price had not planned to go. She stood in her rented room behind the bakery, staring at the green silk ribbon laid across her dresser. It caught the lamplight like water. Boone Calder's water. She had stitched it onto the cuffs and collar of her best wool dress over 3 quiet nights, fingers aching, heart louder than the needle. Pretty, she thought. The word felt dangerous. The town hall smelled of pine smoke and cider. Fiddle music bounced off the walls, fast and cheerful. Couples spun. Boots scuffed. Laughter rose and fell like a tide. Eleanor slipped inside and stayed near the wall, shawl tight around her shoulders. Then Lillian Crow saw her. The widow wore crimson velvet, hair pinned high, confidence sharp as glass. She smiled as she crossed the floor, drawing eyes with her like she always did. "Eleanor," she called sweetly, "you came, and look, you wore the ribbon." The music slowed. People noticed. "I just wanted to hear the fiddles," Eleanor said, voice small. "Nonsense." Lillian took her hand, grip firm. "You must dance. Everyone's curious." Eleanor shook her head. "I don't dance." Lillian laughed. "Oh, we'll fix that." She pulled Eleanor toward the center. The floor seemed to tilt. Whispers followed. Eleanor felt large, too large, a dark blot among bright dresses. "You know," Lillian said, loud enough to carry, "Boone Calder isn't coming. Men like him don't court women like us. They trade kindness for labor." Eleanor's breath caught. He wouldn't. Lillian leaned close, smile gone. "You stitched his boot, that's all you were." A tool. The hem of Eleanor's dress snagged under Lillian's heel. Fabric tore. The sound cut deep. Eleanor stumbled and fell to her knees. The green ribbon unraveled. Silk spilled across the dusty floor. Laughter rose, sharp, merciless. Eleanor squeezed her eyes shut. She reached for the ribbon, fingers shaking, wishing the floor would open. The doors slammed open. Cold rushed in. Snow followed. The laughter died mid-breath. Boone Calder stood in the doorway. He wore a black suit that strained at the shoulders, old and ill-fitting, dragged from storage. Snow crusted his beard. His eyes scanned the room once, then fixed. He crossed the floor without hesitation. Lillian stepped back. "Mr. Calder, I was only—" "Quiet," Boone said. The word dropped heavy. He knelt, took Eleanor's hand. "Look at me." She did. Tears blurred his face, but he was there, solid. "Forget the ribbon," he said. "Stand." He pulled her up, standing close, blocking every stare. Then he turned to the room. "I've lived with wolves," Boone said. "They kill to eat. I've seen uglier things tonight." Silence held. This woman fixed what was broken without asking for anything. You break things for sport. Quote. He reached into his coat and pressed a heavy iron key into Eleanor's palm. "I've got a cabin on the high ridge. It's warm, quiet. No one laughs there." He looked down at her. "I'm not asking for help. I'm asking for company. Will you come?" Her fingers closed around the key. It was cold, heavy. "Yes," she whispered. He grinned, louder. "Yes," she said. Boone swept her into his arms and carried her out into the snow. The town did not follow. They left before dawn in a wagon pulled by 2 draft horses, loaded for winter. Eleanor sat wrapped in buffalo robes, fear creeping in as the town lights faded. "I'm scared," she said. Boone nodded. "Good. Means you're honest." The trail narrowed. Pines closed in. Then Boone reined in hard. "We're being followed." 3 riders. After the gold. "We go off trail," Boone said, steering into the trees. "It's dangerous." "I chose this," Eleanor said. He nodded once. The wagon plunged into the forest, branches snapping. Behind them, riders stopped at the edge, watching tracks disappear. The mountain swallowed Boone Calder and Eleanor Price whole, and it was not finished with them yet. Snow came down hard once they left the trail, not gentle flakes. Sheets of white that erased the world as fast as it appeared. The wagon lurched over roots and hidden rock. Eleanor gripped the seat with one hand and Boone's coat with the other. She did not scream. She focused on breathing, on staying upright, on trusting the man beside her. Boone drove with grim focus. His eyes never stopped moving. "Hold tight," he said once, voice flat. "This path don't forgive mistakes." The forest narrowed into stone. The gorge opened without warning. She felt it before she saw it. The air dropped colder, sharper. The sound of wind changed, funneled through rock like a scream trapped in a throat. Devil's cut. The wagon crept along a shelf, barely wider than the wheels. Rock wall to the left. Nothing to the right, but white, space, and death. Eleanor swallowed hard and kept her eyes on Boone's hands. Then it snapped. The sound cracked louder than a rifle shot. The front trace tore clean through at the ring. The wagon jerked sideways. Eleanor screamed as the rear wheel slid toward open air. "Whoa!" Boone roared. The horses screamed too, hooves skidding on ice. The wagon tilted. Wood groaned. Snow fell into the void below, never landing. "Don't move," Boone barked. He jumped down on the safe side, boots digging into ice. The wagon creaked again, slipping another inch. Eleanor froze, breath locked in her chest. Boone grabbed rope, hands fumbling. He tried to knot it to the frozen leather, fingers stiff and clumsy. The rope slid, the wagon shifted. "Damn it," he growled. "My hands won't." "Boone," Eleanor called. Her voice shook, but it carried. "Give it to me." "No." She threw off the robes. Cold hit like a hammer. She climbed down, boots slipping. Boone reached for her. "Stay put," he ordered. "I won't," she said. She pulled her sewing kit from her coat pocket. "I can fix leather. You'll freeze." "I'm already cold." She knelt beside the broken trace. Snow soaked her skirt. Her fingers went numb as she bared them to the wind. She drove the awl through the thick hide with her weight, breath hissing out. "Punch! Pull!" Boone held the strap together, eyes wide. "You're bleeding." "Then don't move." She worked fast, faster than she ever had. The wind howled. Her fingers burned, then went dead. She tied the knot with her teeth. "Go!" she gasped. Boone didn't hesitate. He leapt onto the seat and cracked the reins. The horses lunged. The leather went taut. The stitch held. The wagon lurched back onto solid ground. Boone drove them into a shallow overhang and stopped. He jumped down and grabbed Eleanor's hands. They were blue. "You fool," he breathed. "You beautiful fool." He pulled her hands inside his coat, pressing them to his chest. She shook hard, teeth chattering. "I just meant tears," she whispered. He held her like he might never let go. The next sound was wrong. Not wind, not wood. A gunshot echoed up the gorge. Boone stiffened. "They found us." They reached the cabin by dawn, built into stone. Heavy logs, iron-barred door. Boone hustled Eleanor inside and set her by the hearth. He loaded rifles without speaking. "Who are they?" she asked. "Men who want what's mine," he said, "and don't care who they hurt." The first bullet shattered a shutter. Boone fired back. The cabin filled with smoke and thunder. Eleanor crouched on the floor, hands bandaged, loading rifles as fast as he handed them down. Click, load, hand up. They worked in silence. Together. Then the smell came. Smoke. "They're burning us out," Boone said. The fire crept up the back wall. Heat pressed in. Boone grabbed her shoulders. "When I charge, you run for the horses." "No, this ain't sewing." She looked at the back wall, the chinking, old moss, dry. "They're right there," she said, "behind it." Boone understood. He tore at the wall with a crowbar. Light broke through. A man's back filled the gap. "The kettle," Boone snapped. Eleanor grabbed it. Boiling water sloshed. She flung it through the hole. A scream tore the air. Boone kicked the door open and fired. Twice, silence followed. They stood there, shaking, smoke curling around them. "You didn't run," Boone said. "I stand," Eleanor said. He sank to his knees and held her, sobbing into her apron. Outside, snow fell quiet again. But the mountain was still watching. Smoke thinned, snow-muffled sound. Boone kept watch at the shutter while Eleanor fed the fire and wrapped fresh cloth around her hands. The burns and cuts stung now that fear had loosened its grip. She welcomed the pain. It meant they were still breathing. At first light, Boone eased the door open. Cold rushed in, clean and sharp. Outside, two bodies lay still in the snow, dark shapes already softening under drifting white. The third man was gone. Tracks fled downslope, uneven and fast. "He'll spread the story," Boone said. "That's fine." Eleanor stood beside him, shoulders squared. "We should move." They spent the morning burying what needed burying. Boone worked with steady hands. Eleanor gathered spilled supplies, counted rounds, checked the horses. When she bent to lift a crate, her breath caught, but she did not stop. The mountain noticed effort. It respected follow-through. By noon the storm broke. Sun cut through clouds and painted the gorge in blinding silver. Boone hitched the team. Before they left, he walked Eleanor to the back wall and touched the damp chinking she had pointed out. "You saved us twice," he said. She shook her head. "I just see weak spots." They rode hard through the afternoon, then slower as the land widened. The cabin fell behind them, small and quiet again. The trail home took patience. Boone showed her how to read the snow, how to choose the ground that would hold a wheel. She listened. She learned. They camped that night in a stand of spruce. Boone built the lean-to. Eleanor cooked beans and dried meat, fingers stiff but willing. When they ate, they did not talk much. Words felt fragile. Silence felt earned. The next days came steady. Cold mornings, long hauls, careful choices. Eleanor drove when Boone scouted ahead. He trusted her with the reins. The horses trusted her voice. She found a rhythm that surprised her. On the fourth day, they crested a ridge and saw the valley spread wide below. Big Elk Crossing lay there, brown and wet, the last snow sinking into mud. Eleanor's chest tightened. "They'll stare." Boone nodded. "Let them." They rolled in at dusk. Heads turned. Conversations slowed. Someone dropped a crate. The wagon passed the saloon, the hotel, the church. Boone did not stop. He pulled up in front of Fletcher's general store. The bell rang. Inside, shelves stood thin from winter. Mr. Fletcher looked older. Lillian Crow stood near the counter, tapping her parasol, voice sharp with complaint. She turned. Her mouth fell open. "You're alive," she said. Eleanor stepped forward first. Her voice did not shake. "Good evening, Mrs. Crow." Lillian recovered enough to smile. "Well, miracles do happen. I see the mountain hasn't changed you much." Boone placed a hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "Not heavy, certain. We're here on business," he said. He set a folded paper on the counter. A bank draft. Fletcher's hands trembled as he read the number. I can't," Fletcher stammered. "That's two." "Lock, stock, and land," Boone said. "Tonight." Quote, "The deal was done before the lamp burned low." Boone turned to the room. "This store belongs to Mrs. Calder." The word settled, Calder. Eleanor felt it land in her bones. She moved behind the counter, wood warm beneath her palms. She looked up at Lillian. "Credit won't be extended. Cash only." A ripple of sound passed the room, not laughter, something else. Later, with the door locked and the sign flipped, Boone unlaced his boots. He glanced at the old pair in the corner, thick black stitches scarred but holding. "Bank asked about the gold," he said. Eleanor kept sewing. "What did you tell them?" Quote, he smiled, small and real, "that the mountain is empty." Her needle paused. Outside, rain began to fall, washing the last winter dirt from the street. Inside, the stove hummed. Boone watched Eleanor work, the quiet between them deep and sure. He did not say what he had done to the tunnel that morning. Not yet. Spring did not arrive gently. It came in a rush of mud and meltwater, prying winter loose from the ground one loud day at a time. Big Elk Crossing smelled of wet wool and horse sweat. Wagons bogged down in ruts. Tempers ran short. Eleanor Calder opened the store at dawn and closed it after dark. Learning the weight of keys and ledgers, she stocked what lasted. Wool, nails, beans. Boots that could take a season of work. Boone hauled crates and fixed the roof when it leaked. He spoke little. People watched anyway. Lillian Crow watched the hardest. She came in one afternoon when the store was busy, silk dress spattered with mud. "I hear you're cutting credit," she said, loud enough to carry. "That's poor business." Eleanor met her eyes. "It's honest business." Lillian smiled thin. "Honesty doesn't keep doors open?" Eleanor glanced at the door, at the line of customers waiting patiently. "This one stays open." Boone stood at the back, hands full of feed sacks. He didn't step in. He didn't need to. Lillian left with her chin high and her pride dented. That night, Boone finally spoke about the mountain. "I closed it," he said, staring into the stove. "The tunnel." Eleanor's needle paused. "Closed it. How?" Quote, "Blew the mouth. Collapsed the first 100 feet." She looked up. "The gold." "Still there," he said, "buried." She considered him. The scar on his cheek, the lines at his eyes. "Why?" He took a breath. "Because it calls wolves, and I'm done feeding them." Silence held. Then Eleanor nodded once. "Good." The next morning, the town learned. A man rode in hard from the lower valley, breathless with news. "Heard you buried a fortune," he said, half laughing. "That true?" Boone didn't deny it. "It is." The rumor spread like fire in dry grass. Men gathered in corners. Questions sharpened. Eyes measured Boone's back when he turned away. That evening, Eleanor found Boone lacing his boots with more care than usual. "They're restless," she said. "So am I," he replied. He set a heavy iron key on the table, the same one from the dance. "We leave at first light." She nodded. "I'll pack." They loaded the wagon quietly. Tools, provisions, the old stitched boots, set careful beneath the seat. Boone left the store keys with the church deacon. "Temporary," he said. "Mind the books." At dawn, 3 men blocked the road. Not strangers, locals. Faces Eleanor recognized from the counter, from jokes and glances and silence. "You owe us," one said. That gold belongs to the town. Boone stepped down from the wagon. He did not raise his voice. It belongs to the mountain. Another man spat. You married above your station and think you can take what you want. Eleanor climbed down too. She stood beside Boone, shoulders square. We took nothing, she said. We left it buried. Laughter rippled, sharp. We don't believe you. Boone met their eyes. Then, come see. They rode together, uneasy and quiet, up toward the ridge. The path narrowed. Snow lingered in shade. At the blasted tunnel mouth, Boone reined in. Rock filled the entrance. Fresh. Clean. No way through without weeks of work. One man dismounted and pounded the stone. You're lying, he said weakly. Boone shook his head. I finished the work. Anger flared. Then something else. Uncertainty. The mountain stood solid behind Boone, unmoved. They left without a word. That night, Eleanor and Boone camped under stars sharp as glass. Eleanor stared up, heart thudding. They'll try again. Maybe, Boone said, but not tonight. She reached for his hand. He took it, warm, steady. A week later, a circuit judge passed through town. Papers were signed in a small room behind the store. No crowd, no silk, just ink and breath, and a promise spoken plain. When Eleanor said yes, it sounded like an answer she had been holding for years. They did not stay long after. The store ran without them. The mountain waited. On the climb back, rain turned to snow again. Boone drove. Eleanor watched the line of trees and felt something loosen inside her chest. Boone, she said, quiet. If the world comes looking again. He squeezed her hand. We'll stand. They crested the ridge as dusk fell, the cabin a dark shape against stone. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin and hopeful. Eleanor smiled. Behind them, far down the trail, a single rider stopped and watched the wagon disappear into the trees. The mountain accepted them back without ceremony. No applause, no forgiveness, just cold air and quiet work. Snow lingered on the shaded slopes even as spring tried to push upward from the valleys. Eleanor learned the cabin again, not as a guest this time, but as a woman who belonged there. She set the hearth right. She mended seams before they split. She learned where the roof sighed under heavy wind and how to listen for it in the dark. Boone watched her without comment. He fixed traps, checked lines, split wood until his shoulders burned. The work settled them. At night, they sat by the fire. Sometimes they talked. Often they didn't. Silence had become a shared language. One evening, Boone brought out the old boots, the ones with the thick black stitches across the toe. He set them near the fire to dry and smiled, small and private. Those should have failed a dozen times, he said. Eleanor shrugged. They were stitched with care. He nodded. That makes the difference. Summer climbed slowly. The gorge bloomed green in places that had never known softness. Eleanor learned the trails, the safe crossings, the places where the ground looked solid but lied. Boone taught her without lecturing. When she made mistakes, he let them be hers. She grew strong in ways the town would never have measured. Late one afternoon, Boone came back from checking the high traps with his jaw set. Riders, he said. One. Eleanor felt the old fear stir, then settle. Do we hide? No, Boone said. We wait. The rider arrived at dusk. He dismounted with care, hands empty, voice tight. I'm not here to cause trouble. Boone stood on the porch, rifle resting against the rail. Then, speak. The men won't follow, the rider said. They know the gold's buried. They know you meant it. Boone studied him. And the town? The rider hesitated. They'll talk. They always do. But they won't come up here. Boone nodded once. The rider left without asking for water. Eleanor exhaled slowly. That fall, they went back down together. Not in secret. Not in fear. They arrived in Big Elk Crossing on a clear morning. The store windows newly washed, shelves full. The bell rang when they entered. Conversations paused. then resumed. Eleanor moved behind the counter like she had never left. Boone leaned against a post, arms crossed, watchful but calm. Lillian Crow stood near the back, older now, the sharpness dulled. She did not speak. Neither did Eleanor. The store thrived. People came for boots that lasted, for wool that held warmth, for quiet fairness. Eleanor hired help who worked steady and asked little. She taught them to mend before replacing, to value repair over shine. Boone hauled freight in winter and guided in summer. He kept the mountain at his back and the town at arm's length. Years passed like that. On a cool evening, Boone came in late, rain darkening his coat. He set something heavy on the table, a small wooden box. He opened it. Inside lay a final gold nugget, the last he had kept. "I should put it back," he said. Eleanor shook her head. "No, let it rest." He watched her, searching. "You sure?" Quote. She smiled. "We have enough." He took her hands, rough and warm. "You gave me more than I knew to ask for." Quote. She squeezed back. "You let me stand." They buried the nugget together at dawn, high above the tree line where the wind could not carry greed. Boone covered it with stone. Eleanor pressed the earth flat. They did not mark the place. Winter came again, then spring. The store bell rang and rang. The mountain stood patient. One night, as snow fell soft and steady, Boone unlaced his boots by the fire. He set the old stitched pair beside the new ones. Eleanor looked up from her sewing. "Still keeping them?" she asked. He nodded. "They remind me." "Of what?" He smiled, eyes crinkling. "Of the days someone fixed what mattered." Eleanor finished her stitch and cut the thread. She leaned back, content. Outside, the wind moved through the pines. Inside, the fire held. They did not need gold. They had work. They had quiet. They had each other. And that was enough. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.